My dream as an actor destroyed my life, but I still made it. This is my story. I was always told that dreams were for the brave, that if you really set your mind to it, nothing could stop you. I was a kid with big aspirations. My biggest dream was to be an actor. I didn't want fame or money, just the recognition that I had achieved something big. And of course, I wanted to be someone who inspired others to never give up, no matter what the world thought of them. It all started in my small town, where there were hardly any opportunities for someone like me. No one around me believed in what I was doing. My friends, people in my neighborhood, even my parents didn't understand me. But I knew what I wanted, and determination drove me forward. My girlfriend, Valeria, was one of the few people who supported me in the beginning. I remember how she would hug me before every audition, telling me that one day I would make it. But over time, everything started to change. The auditions became longer and my time with her shorter. Opportunities became scarce and rejections piled up. Still, every time I was told no, it only made me stronger, or so I thought. One day, after months of trying, I received a message from a talent agency that had managed to see something in me. It was my chance. I was excited. I felt like all my effort had finally paid off. I had finally achieved something. I told Valeria, and her eyes sparkled with hope, but she just said, "That's good, but what about us?" I looked at her confused. Us? This is what I always wanted, Valeria. It's my chance. But she didn't look at me the same way. She couldn't understand how I was so focused on something that, for her, wasn't guaranteed. "I can't watch you do this anymore. You don't have time for me. You have to decide, because I don't know if I want to be in a relationship with someone who prefers to dream instead of live reality." That was the first time I understood that, in his mind, I had stopped being the man I believed in. He told me that we were no longer working and that he had to leave. I felt as if the world was collapsing on me. But at the same time, I told myself that I had to move on. Sometimes, when you pursue a dream, people are left behind. And that, although painful, I understood the hard way. My parents were supportive at first. My mother told me that everything would be okay, that I should keep fighting. But soon, things changed. Months went by and I still couldn't find success. I started accumulating debts, not being able to pay the rent. I lived off temporary jobs I hated, but I needed the money. My parents started putting pressure on me. "When will you make a real decision, son? How much longer are you going to live on dreams? Are you going to keep going like this, hoping someone will give you a chance?" They started to distance themselves, to stop calling me. Every time I tried to talk about my dream, I felt that what had once been support had turned into disdain. "You should be more realistic. No one is going to give you a chance." That was what they told me one afternoon, right after I had been fired from another job. And that was the last time I spoke to them. Loneliness became my friend, and tiredness became my daily routine. Every audition seemed to be the same story. They told me to try again, that I was good, but that I wasn't what they were looking for. I didn't know if my dream was really worth it anymore. But what kept me going was the idea that I couldn't give up. One night, after returning from yet another low-paying job, I found myself in the corner of a bar where I overheard a conversation that would change my life. A film producer was sitting at a table, talking about an independent film that needed an actor like me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were referring to me unwittingly, as if I were a missed opportunity. At that moment, I made up my mind. That night, I gathered my courage and walked over. "Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt," I said nervously, "but I heard they're looking for an actor. I could do it." The producer looked at me, gave me a disconcerting smile, and then simply asked, "Do you have anything to show?" It was my moment. I said, "Yes, give me a few minutes." He asked me to improvise. I was so nervous I could barely think, but I did. And somehow, I managed to capture something. I managed to get his attention. At the end of my improvisation, the producer looked at me and said something I will never forget. "You have something. Come to the office tomorrow. Maybe you have a chance." Somehow, I had managed to get someone to see what I saw in myself. But it wasn't all that easy. That same night, I received a text. It was Valeria. "Why haven't you called me? I need to talk to you." Anxiety filled me. What was I going to tell him? That I was now getting closer to a dream I thought was already lost? That I had gone through so much pain and sacrifice to get to this moment? But something inside me, something that told me there was still hope, made me answer him. "I want to see you. I need to talk." The next day, I met Valeria in the same park where we used to sit when everything seemed simpler. When I saw her, something in her eyes made me doubt. She was not the same Valeria I had left. This time, her eyes did not reflect hope, but rather a mixture of regret and something else, fear. "How have you been?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but knowing there was nothing casual about our conversation. She looked at the floor before answering. I'm okay, but that's not what I want to talk about," she said, her voice breaking. "Gonzalo, after everything that happened, I realized how much I failed you. I let you go when you needed me the most. I saw you fight for your dream and I left you alone. A lump formed in my throat. I remembered how he had abandoned me at the most difficult moment, but I couldn't deny that something inside me still wished things had been different. However, something bigger, something stronger told me that I couldn't keep looking back. I had grown accustomed to loneliness, to pain, and I had begun to understand that, to get where I wanted to go, I had to let go of everything that tied me down. Valeria, things aren't the same as before, I replied, taking a breath. I've changed. I've been through so much, but now I see that suffering made me stronger. I can't go back to the way we were. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Gonzalo. I've been so stupid. I didn't know how much I loved you until I saw you disappear from my life. I don't care what it takes. I want to be a part of your life again. I support you. I promise that this time I'll be by your side. Those words, so sincere, made me hesitate, but I couldn't fall into the same trap. I couldn't let my heart, so accustomed to disappointment, make decisions for me. I had spent too long waiting for someone to believe in me. Why would I give them another chance when my life was finally starting to change? I'm sorry, Valeria, but I'm not the same anymore. What you wanted from me no longer exists, I said, as I stood up, leaving the conversation behind. That was the last time I saw her. Maybe I would regret it one day, but at that moment, I knew that my fate could no longer depend on anyone else. My meeting with the producer the next day was like a dream come true. I arrived at his office, and after several tests and rehearsals, I was told that I had landed the lead role in an independent film. The producer gave me a smile that made me feel that all my effort, all my suffering had been worth it. Welcome to the project, Gonzalo. We have a lot of work to do, he said, shaking my hand firmly. For weeks, I immersed myself in filming. It was exhausting emotionally and physically. Every day was a challenge. At times, I felt like I was about to give up, that this dream wasn't for me. But I remembered what I had left behind, the loneliness, the self-doubt, the people who no longer supported me, and that drove me to keep going. But then one afternoon, while I was reviewing the script, I received a call that made my blood run cold. It was my mother. Gonzalo, where are you? Why aren't you answering? Your father is very ill. He has a serious health problem, and we don't know if he'll be able to bear it. My legs shook, my mind clouded. For years, my parents had been the first to tell me to stop dreaming. Now, I needed their support more than ever, but I knew I couldn't go back to the life I'd left behind. Couldn't turn back. That night, as memories of my childhood and my relationship with them haunted me, I realized that I was no longer just an actor in a movie. I was someone who, despite everything I had lost, had made it this far, and I could no longer allow anything or anyone to keep me from what I had built. I decided not to go see my father. It wasn't easy. I couldn't ignore what they meant to me, but I understood that this was my time. This was my dream and my life, and I wasn't going to let the sacrifices I had already made go in vain. As the months passed, my career began to take off. The film received praise, and I began to be recognized as an emerging talent in the world of independent film. But even as the lights of fame began to shine for me, there was something that plagued me, something I couldn't let go of. Valeria. Weeks went by without any news from her, but one afternoon while I was at a press event, someone approached me. It was her. "How are you, Gonzalo?" she said with a smile that, despite everything, was still familiar. "I know you walked away, but I'm here because, after everything we've been through, I want to ask for your forgiveness. I've followed you from afar, I've seen everything you've achieved, and I'm so sorry for not believing in you." I saw her there, with a different attitude, more mature, but something inside me had already changed. I knew we were no longer the same. I couldn't go back to the life I had left behind, or to the empty promises she once made me. What's happened is done, and while I appreciate what you say, I'm no longer the man you left, I replied, looking directly into his eyes. His face changed, but he didn't insist. Somehow, he understood. As I walk down red carpets and my career continues to rise, I think about everything I left behind. And while dreams can be the engine that takes you far, they also teach you that the road is full of sacrifices, of moments you can never get back. But in the end, the only one who has to believe in you is yourself. Because if you don't believe in your own dream, no one else will. The movie that had given me the opportunity to shine was just the beginning, but life didn't allow me to relax for long. With success came new challenges, and fame brought with it a price I wasn't prepared to pay. The paparazzi, the rumors, and the expectations became increasingly heavy. People who had previously ignored me now saw me as an example, but also as someone who had to live up to their expectation. Everyone had something to say about my life, about my career, and most painfully, about my future. Despite all that, nothing affected affected me as much as Valeria's constant presence in my thoughts. She had disappeared for months, but I knew that, sooner or later, she would reappear. People in the media began to ask questions about my personal life, and whenever they asked me about her, I had to lie, say that everything was fine, but it wasn't. One night, after a particularly grueling press conference, I received a text on my phone. It was from Valeria. The text simply said, "I need to talk to you. It's important." It didn't take me long to decide what to do. Somehow, I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't avoid the subject anymore. Maybe, somehow, it was time to close that chapter, or at least that's what my heart was telling me, even though my mind was screaming at me that I was about to fall into the trap once again. We met at a cafe. At first, the atmosphere was tense. I watched her, waiting for her to say something that would make me feel like we were worth seeing. But she wasn't so sure how to start. When she finally did, her voice was almost inaudible. "Gonzalo, what happened? I never wanted it to be like this. I never wanted to hurt you. But after all this time, I realized that I was always wrong. I let you go when I needed you the most, and now, after seeing you accomplish all this, I realized that I was a fool." Her tone was full of regret, but something told me I shouldn't trust her anymore. I'd experienced this before. Yet, as I looked at her, I felt a mix of sadness and compassion. She had been the person I loved, the one I thought would be my companion forever, and I still held a small part of me that loved her. "Valeria, everything you did hurt me more than you can imagine. But it also made me realize something, that only I am responsible for my life. Only I can decide what I want to be. And I no longer have room in my life for someone who makes me doubt that." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to expect from you, Gonzalo. I just wanted you to know that I've missed you. I don't want it to end like this. I need you." That word, need, froze me, because who really needed me? She, who had left me when I needed her the most, or me, who had come so far with no one by my side, fighting only for my dreams? What did it mean to need someone when life had taught you that you couldn't depend on anyone but yourself? I can't be the person you need. I've done all this for me, Valeria. For me. And I've learned to live without depending on anyone else. Weeks passed after that conversation, and life continued on. My career continued to grow. My name was starting to appear everywhere. Magazines, interviews, and awards. Everything seemed to be lining up perfectly, but I still felt empty. I felt like something was missing, that there was something beyond success that I couldn't achieve. And somehow, my mind kept going back to that conversation with Valeria. Was it selfish of me to reject her? Should I have given her a second chance? But everything changed one night. I was at a gala party, surrounded by celebrities, when I received an unexpected call. It was from my mother. We hadn't talked much since I shot to fame, and I didn't expect her to call me in the middle of all the chaos. "Your father is in critical condition. The situation is very serious. He told me that the only thing he wanted before he left was to see you." My world had come crashing down on me. All the money, awards, and recognition didn't matter. My father, the man who had taught me to be strong, was on the brink of death, and I wasn't there for him. I felt like a failure, like everything I had accomplished was worthless if I couldn't be there for my family when it mattered. "I'm on my way now," I said, hanging up the call and leaving the party. The glamour of star life faded in a second. There was only one thing left on my mind, my family. When I arrived at my parents' house, the atmosphere was tense. My father was in bed, weak, his breathing labored. My mother looked at me with tears in her eyes. It was at that moment that I realized how much I had neglected those who had always supported me. For years, I had pushed them aside in pursuit of a dream that now seemed meaningless without them. "Dad, I'm so sorry," I said, taking his hand. "I shouldn't have left you alone." My father smiled weakly with difficulty. "Son, what you did was worth it. I know it cost you, but what matters most to me is that you keep fighting for your dreams, that you keep moving forward." Those words, in the midst of sadness, were a shock of reality. My father always believed in me, even when I doubted him. And now, in his final moments, he was giving me the permission I so desperately needed to continue on my path. After that experience, life took an even more unexpected turn for me. Valeria appeared again. This time, she was not the same woman I had known. Now, she seemed like a broken person, without strength, without the brilliance that once defined her. "Gonzalo, please listen. I know I can't change what happened, but I need your help. I can't go on without you." I looked at him, but something in me had changed forever. I was no longer the same person she had known. "I can't be what you need, Valeria," I replied. "I'm sorry." And so, So, with my father gone and that chapter coming to a definitive close, I understood that true success was not being a famous actor, but being able to look back, learn from my mistakes, and ultimately move forward without looking back. Years passed since then. My career continued to rise, but I now saw fame from a different perspective. People recognized me, but I was no longer that star desperate for attention. I began to take control of my life in a way I never imagined. The awards, the interviews, the spotlights, none of that mattered anymore. My real battle, the one that taught me everything I needed to learn, was the one I fought within myself. It was on a rainy afternoon, years after my last meeting with Valeria, when the phone rang. It was not my mother's or some friend in the industry. The number was unknown. When I answered, I was met with a voice that chilled my blood. "Hello, Gonzalo.
I'm Valeria.
I need you to listen to me." My legs went limp, but I immediately pulled myself together. "Valeria, what do you want?" Her voice, though empty and cold, was filled with desperation. "I swear, Gonzalo, I'm sorry for everything I said about what I wanted to change. But I'm not calling you to ask you for anything. I'm calling you to tell you something important." At that moment, something inside me clicked. I couldn't imagine what else he could possibly have to say to me. "What's wrong?" The pause was so long that it felt like time had stopped. Finally, she spoke, but it wasn't what I expected. "I had an accident, a serious accident, and I need you to know something before it's too late. The man who was with you, the one who left you, wasn't me. Everything I did it because I felt like you'd never be enough. But the truth is, you were always the best thing I ever had. And if you have to hear one thing from me now, it's that I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry, Gonzalo. I'm so sorry." I was silent for a long moment. I couldn't process it. Everything that had happened, all the pain and struggles, seemed like a cruel joke of fate. "Valeria, what do you want from me now?" Anger and sadness mixed in my voice, but I couldn't stop listening. "I just want you to know that what you did was the best thing you could have done. If you hadn't let me go, I would have never changed. I would have never understood what love really is. And now, I just want you to live a happy life. I don't want you to come see me or help me. Just, if you were ever hurt by what I did, I just want you to remember me for what I could have been, not what I was." The call ended on a somber note, and my heart felt like it was caught in a whirlwind of emotions. I was about to do something I never imagined. I didn't want to forgive her, couldn't, but at the same time, the understanding of her words began to sink in. Sometimes, love wasn't enough to change people, and maybe I had come too late for what could have been. A few more weeks passed, and as I continued with my life, the news of Valeria spread in the media. It was not the kind of story I had expected, but it ended up being bigger than any success in my career. Valeria had disappeared from the media, and no one knew what had happened to her. Her last interview had left everyone with the feeling that she was looking for redemption, but along the way she had found a bitter truth about herself. One day, after weeks of uncertainty, I came across an article in a newspaper. They were talking about a new project that was taking shape, a project of inmates, people who had fallen into their own abyss of wrong decisions, and how, through reflection and hard work, they could find a way out. The surprise came at the end, when I realized that Valeria had been the creator of this project. Not only had she changed her life, but she had decided to dedicate her time to helping others find what she herself had lost: purpose. Somehow, she had begun to redirect pain into something positive. And there I was, standing in front of the mirror. In that moment, I understood something I never knew before. Maybe everything that had happened between us had been a lesson, something that prepared me for the life I was living now. Valeria had shown me that love wasn't always enough, but true strength came from knowing when to let go and, more importantly, when to forgive, though not for her, but for myself. My career continued, but it wasn't the same. I no longer sought external validation. I didn't need to be the most famous or the most recognized. I had found something more important: inner peace, and maybe, just maybe, that peace was the true reward. As I looked out at the horizon from my window, a smile spread across my face. I might never know if Valeria found her redemption, but I did know that I had found mine, and that was the only story that really mattered.